talk to me about the process of integration. I imagine, how many employees is Mondee right now?
Mondee now has more than 1,000 employees. We are headquartered in Austin, Texas, and we have more than a dozen offices around the world.
So, I mean, global company, 1,000 people who are part of this team, and every acquisition you make is not going to fit right up at the C-suite top level. You're going to bolt it in somewhere else in the company. What is that integration process? And what is that communication strategy from your level, your management level, throughout the company or where needed to ensure that it's a successful integration? How do you approach that?
The first thing is that because we have done it 15 times, we have very precise processes of how it's done. And we have very specific individuals that are in charge of different aspects of the integration, right? The other thing is that as we make an acquisition, we evaluate over some period of time, we're not in a rush, all the strengths of the company. And we make sure that from a human resources perspective, we don't do anything that would jeopardize the dynamics, the energy, the atmosphere within that organization, right?
Like you're not just going to go gut it to grab some synergies. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So to give you a simple example, in Brazil, where we made this acquisition, is the second largest B2B player in Brazil. Another player called CVC, which was the largest player in Brazil, it tried to pursue a similar strategy. It acquired dozens of companies in that geography. And then right away, like you said, they tried to cut. They didn't follow a clear strategy. And then they screwed it up entirely and they're losing their market share. And that's one of the many reasons that Brazil is a very interesting market, because it has a collapsing kind of giant. And then there are opportunities for high-tech new players with a foothold there to make a lot of damage in terms of acquiring market share. So again, that's an example of how not to integrate. And like I said, again, Mondee has been doing it for 11 years. So there is the DNA and the expertise in carrying out these integration processes.
Really interesting. Really interesting. Thanks for kind of taking us behind the scenes in the travel industry there. Now, before I change gears, I do want to ask a question, maybe a segue into the other world of your career. Let's look at the pandemic. How has that affected global traffic, and how have there been lasting effects that are really changing and perhaps new opportunities that are coming from this? What have you seen?
Yes. So initially, like we discussed before, the pandemic was like a shock. It was the biggest shock in travel industry in our generation. So it was all about gloom and doom. But in the end, just like with the Chinese farmer parable that we discussed before, in my opinion, the pandemic was the best thing that ever happened to travel. And I'll explain what I mean by that.
Okay.
So if you look at travel, it's benefiting from two very important macro dynamics. Okay. On the one hand, the population of the planet is growing, right? And then on the second hand, the percentage of people that travel is growing. To give you a sense, in 1950, 25 million traveled around the world. There were 25 million only international travelers. And in 2019, there were 1.5 billion international travelers. And this is still nowhere close to the 8 billion population of the entire planet, right? So in the 1950s, international travel was the privilege of the very, very few. By 2019, it's still a privilege which is enjoyed by a bigger percentage, which is around 20% of the world's population, right? Now, the issue that you had with travel was that whenever there was some sort of a crisis or a disturbance or some sort of softening of the market, people would stop traveling, either for a few weeks or a few months or a year or 2 years. And that is because travel was perceived to be a luxury. Less of the luxury of the 50s, where only 25 million people in the whole world travel, but still a luxury. What COVID brought was a paradigm shift. So it accelerated the process of travel becoming not just a luxury, but a real necessity. So this has a very lasting impact, and we are seeing it now, and we will see it over the next few years. Whenever there is a softening of the economy or wherever there is war in Ukraine, right? I mean, that would have been a huge issue for travel if it happened like 6, 7, 10 years ago. Now, what we're seeing is that people are no longer stopped traveling. They continue to travel. It's just that they're trying to find more cost-efficient ways to do it.